The book of Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 5, talks a lot about women. It starts by talking about family generally. Verse 1 it says, do not rebuke another man actually, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Then verse 3 now turns and says, give recognition to these widows who are really in need. And in the process here, the emphasis is also on women. From verse 3 all the way to 16 is really talking about women. He talks about how to identify real widows that need help in verse 5 and 6. For a widow to need help, she needs to be desolate, left alone. And therefore, you are not helping somebody who can help themselves, and that way making them idle. So it has to be somebody desolate, left alone. We also talking about don't just help a widow who is choosing to do things that will not be pleasing to God, or they will misuse what the church is giving in immoral ways, I guess. So this true widow who needs help needs to somebody who trusts in God. She also needs to be somebody who continues in supplication and prayers. In fact, the implication is she spends most of her time praying for others, night and day. So, in conclusion, really, for you to be the kind of widow who needs to be helped, you should not be living for pleasure. You should be living to serve the Lord. So that kind of widow is the one that should be enrolled. What is to be enrolled? To be put on a roster for the widows the church is helping. This person also, we see in verse 7 and 6, must be 60 years or older. That means if you are below 60, you are regarded as a young person. And the assumption is that after you 60, you don't have enough energy to fend for yourself. And therefore the church should, made up of younger people, should be thinking about you. But you should not also have come from a polygamous family. You need to be a wife of one man. I don't know whether that is polygamy of what it is, and why there is a requirement of that you should be a wife of one man. That means whoever died, there can't be another man on the side who should be helping you. And somebody needs to see whether your conduct is right. Are you reported to have good works? Maybe one of the examples is that do you bring up your children well? Do you offer hospitality to strangers? So are you the kind of person who use whatever the church gives in ways that also benefit people beyond your family? In fact, here the words we are being told is that they even wash the saints' feet. I guess that may have been a custom then, but it also means that basically these widows are happy to encourage, to host people who are serving the Lord. And they even relieve the afflicted. They are touched by the pain of others. And diligently follows every good work. So you can see these widows that need help have a very good CV. And still talking about women, if you skip over to verse 11 to 14, still describing the issues of women, you will see that clearly there is an important subject. Verse 11 says, as for younger widows, do not put them on such a list. For when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they want to marry. Thus they bring judgment on themselves because they have broken their first pledge. Verse 13 says, besides, they get into the habit of being idle and going about from house to house. And not only do they become idlers, but also busybodies who talk nonsense, saying things they ought not to say. So what is Paul's opinion? So I counsel younger women, widows, to marry, to actually have children, to manage their homes, and to give the enemy no opportunity for slander. So he is not encouraging people, now that your husband has died, you should not be married to anybody else. In fact, if you listen to the tone of this message, is that if your husband dies when you are below 60, it should be not a bad idea to just remarry if God provides a Christian spouse. Something similar is said in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 9, that the widow is free to marry anyone as long as they marry somebody who is in the Lord. My guess is that that may also be true of men, that men who lose their wives when they are below 60 are also encouraged to get married rather than become dependent on others. They should have a family. In fact, not only are they to marry, it's okay to have children if they are that young. For the women, the younger people should spend their time managing their house. I think this is going further than just being a woman. It's explaining that the management of homes is more the responsibility of a woman than of a man. And a Christian woman should proudly be the one to manage their homes, ensuring there is something to eat, ensuring the cleanliness of the house, ensuring hospitality for the couple or for the family. That is the responsibility of a woman, and especially this woman who may have lost her husband. She should not forget those responsibilities just because her husband has actually died. We are doing all that in order to give no opportunity to the devil to speak reproachably about you. When you become a busybody, because the words used are pretty tricky words describing what will happen to you when you are idle. You don't get married, or you make a commitment you're not getting married. Short while later, again you are marrying, and you're already on the list. They say no. Let them take their time. Don't be in a hurry to put them down. It's okay for them to get married. Of course, the assumption is not that they are bad women, but they have sensual desires which they have to fight against. The assumption, of course, is that the older women over 60 will not be unable to manage their sexual drives because it wanes with the time. That's the implication I'm reading here. But when you're a young woman, you also have sexual needs. And instead of living in temptation, if there is somebody to marry you, you should simply get married, and that will be very essential. They overcome their dedication to Christ. They want to marry. Now, in other words, here Paul is implying again that it's okay instead of sinning to marry, but there's nothing wrong with remaining single if you are able to manage your sexual desires. Verse 12 is saying that they bring judgment on themselves because they have broken their first pledge. I think that would be, in other words, for you to be put in the list of the widows being helped, is because you have decided to be single. So the church is assuming you are remaining single, helping the church, doing what the things that have been listed, only to again discover that you actually are getting married. And by breaking the pledge, are you not bringing judgment from God that you don't keep your word, you don't keep your promises? So here, Paul is telling them, don't make the promise in the first place. If you are young, be available. If God gives you somebody to marry, go ahead and get married. He's not making a pledge. But of course, that is also giving another message to all of us. That when you make a pledge, although you're making a pledge to a group of people, God himself is the one who will judge you for breaking the pledge. Although the pledge was not made to God, the pledge was made to a group of people. But if you don't keep to your word, you are bringing judgment on yourself, is what I'm getting 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 12 to be actually saying. And you need to ask yourself, is that the way you take the commitments you make? You belong to Chama, to group of women. You promise to give 1,000 shillings every week. But then you have other needs, so you don't keep your word. You don't withdraw from the group, and they have to keep pestering you, looking for, why have you paid? How is the money for this week? You may think you are just annoying the treasurer of the group. But the word of God is saying you are bringing judgment on yourself because you're not keeping your pledge. The same thing with people who make pledges during fundraising. And they are quick to make pledges. I hear some politicians, we're quick to write a check, knowing it will bounce. But you see, they'll get the publicity. The newspaper write about them. The people there will see how much money was given. But the check will never clear. It will bounce. And you think you have tricked them and you've gotten the fame. God is saying he himself will bring judgment on you. So this is what the widows are being told. Don't make a commitment to remain single. Be available. Because if you make that promise and then you don't keep it, God himself will judge you. I don't think we are being discouraged from making pledges. I don't think we are being discouraged from making promises. We are being discouraged from just easily dropping the promise, and yet you made it. I was joking. Which joke? You never make a pledge unless you intend to keep it. Because the person listening to you assumes you are serious. How will he know you are joking? Then later when you have broken your pledge, I was joking. Yeah, the person may accept it was a joke. But God is going to bring judgment on you, which is something that is important. And what would have caused that to these younger women? According to verse 11, it is when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ. They break the pledge and marry. So here, you can see clearly from what Paul is saying is that we are human beings with bodies. And especially when you are younger, there will be desires. And the way to manage the desire, if there is somebody to marry, is to get married. But of course, he is not suggesting that if there's nobody to marry you, that you still get involved in sex, because that's immorality, and has really condemned it. So if you can't get somebody to marry you, you just have to pray that the Lord help you to manage your sexual desire. But he discourages you from making a pledge when you're in your 40s, in your 30s, that you are a widow, you need help. No. Be open for marriage. And I think that's something that we need to have at the back of our mind, even as we deal with our own plannings and things. So the message I'm getting is, do not be quick to make a pledge, you as a person. Number two, you have the people you are making a pledge to discourage you from making the pledge, if they can see it will be difficult for you to keep. So the church itself is being told, don't accept that pledge. People are below 60, don't accept that pledge. Why? because you are putting them into trouble. It's not you should never allow somebody to get themselves into trouble. You are the brothers, your brother's keeper. Don't be like Cain, who asked God, am I my brother's keeper? No. It will be important that you, on your part, actually take time, seriously thinking about how to help a person so they don't make it. It's the same thing. Somebody wants to borrow money from you and you can see they can't repay it. Instead of later getting into trouble, refuse to give them the money so that they don't get themselves into indebtedness that they cannot come out of. I think it will be important to the church is being told, oh, don't agree. Don't allow them to make this kind of pledge if they are young widows. I think that's something very, very important. Look at verse 13 again. Besides, they get in the habit of being idle. In other words, if you start helping, the church starts helping a young widow. She has her food, she has her children, her paid school fees for, by the church, everything. She has a lot of time to herself. And because she gets a lot of time, the first thing is she becomes idle. I think you can see why the Englishman put it in graphic language. Idle minds are the devil's workshop. Maybe even idle hands. In other words, the moment you have extra time and you don't even know what to do with it, there's no motivation to work hard because you're getting free things. You actually are the devil's workshop. Your mind will be the devil's workshop because of being idle. But of course, it's not just these widows who are being told how dangerous it is to be idle. I think it's any woman. You need to plan your time such that you don't have idle time. You have time of rest. That's not being idle. Rest and exercise is very, very important and should be planned for. But that cannot be all your time. Cannot be substantial time, part of your time. So idleness is actually totally condemned. You must plan your life so that you have things to do 24/7, including times for rest. Of course, the older you are, the more rest you require, and the more easy it is for you to get tired. But when you're below 60, you are being discouraged from giving yourself a lot of time of rest that finally becomes time of being idle. So whether you are a young boy or young girl or you are old, all of us must plan our time so that we have no time wondering what to do, so that whatever comes to your hand. Why can't you plan clearly? Think about your vision and mission. And vision and mission ends when you die. So even if you're an old man of 70-something, there are things you can do. There are other things you can't do because your body will not allow you. But there are many things you can do. And the things you are doing is not necessarily to get rich. Your things you are doing it to make an impact for God. Because your calling is not about making money. Your calling is about making impact for God. Now, that calling should be done throughout your life. And that means you have no reason at all to be idle and to be doing nothing so that you can be described as being idle. So, clarity about your vision and calling will help you from will help you to come out of this idleness. But you see, it's not just being idle. They not only get the habit of being idle, they also get the habit of going about from house to house. You have so much time, you thought, hey, have I seen Mama come out? How is Mama Brian? How is... Nothing wrong again from visiting people, but don't be a nuisance to them. Why don't you have a diary so that you are clear and say, I visited 3 people this week. I need to do other things beyond visiting. So that idleness can cause you to become a nuisance. And people run away from you. They lock up their gates because they don't know what to do with you. They are busy themselves. But by coming to visit them, you are creating a problem because they can't work when you are there. These women are being told, don't allow them to start getting free things, because they will not only become idle, they will get time to move from house to house and be a nuisance to others. In fact, according to verse 13, not only do they become idlers, which I've just been talking about, but they also become busybodies who talk nonsense. It's a bad word to be told you're a busybody, because it means you just get involved in everybody's business. You don't mind your own business. You are too busy trying to explain, the daughter of so-and-so is getting pregnant. She's marrying a very useless man. Where did you get the information? And why would you give rumors? Gossip is totally unchristian. But if you have a lot of idle time, it will be very easy to be tempted to be that idle and therefore gossip and be a busybody. In fact, Paul is calling it that they have time to talk nonsense, say things they ought not to. So you can see it's quite an issue talking about women. So how can these women, then do the right things? I think here what I'm learning is they must, to live the kind of life that Paul is describing or warning against, trust in God. Don't trust people because they will disappoint you. Don't trust your husband's relatives. They will disappoint you. Don't trust your own relatives. Put yourself fully in God's hands. When my father died, my mother says the last words my father told her before he died was, "I'm not leaving you in the hands of anybody." Because the African system is for widows to be taken over by the brothers of the husband. See, no? My mother says or said, the man said, "I'm not leaving you in the hands of anybody. I'm leaving you in the hands of God." And wow, didn't we see God really become the husband of widows in the way he was able to help my mother to look after us? Yes, trust in God. And if you do that, then you'll be motivated to continue in prayer, so that prayer becomes your weapon in fighting the devil. You'll avoid living for pleasure. You will not agree to enter into a polygamous home by being inherited. You will bear and bring up children in the fear of the Lord. You will be a manager of your own household. Don't be careless. You take it as your responsibility. Even if you're a professional woman and very involved elsewhere, you will still want to be proudly in charge of your own house. And therefore, that way you become the master of hospitality for your house. But also, you need to commit yourself to helping the afflicted and diligently follow every good work. That's what all of us have encouraged, although the subject specifically in 1 Timothy 5 is women. What you have been saying, and we need to emphasize, is that the primary responsibility of a woman is her family, not the profession. Primary responsibility rests on her for the family. Her responsibility in the church, especially at that time, it was there, but it was limited. But it is the responsibility of the church to look after real widows, like we have been describing. And God has a plan for ministry among women. You can see these widows are being encouraged to have a ministry of some sort in hospitality and encouraging women. So, clearly, according to the description you are getting here, the roles of women and men differ. And I think that's something that you need to ask yourself. Let's look at verse 15. It says, some have in fact already turned away to follow Satan. In other words, if you don't, as women, if you don't take this message seriously, especially if you are a widow, you will soon discover you are actually following Satan. You know, that's why I keep saying this is very interesting. These are Christians. These are people who are born again. Then the husband dies. And somehow the devil is able to confuse the person until they start following Satan. That's why this letter is being written. To rescue women from following Satan. And you need to ask yourself, is there something you are doing that could chase women into cults, demonic cults, or even alcohol? You need to look after, especially widows, so that they don't fall prey to that kind of thing. And then verse 16 is saying, if any woman who is a believer has widows in her care, she should continue to help them and not let the church be burdened with them, so that the church can help those widows who are really in need. In other words, these younger widows, or any woman generally, should see it as her responsibility, if she is a believer, to take care of widows. So you and your husband can look after several widows. It should be your responsibility, and it's a ministry worth doing. She should continue to help them and not let the church be burdened. In other words, if you are looking at a widow, it means you will not enter into the list of the church. So Paul is not encouraging the idea of communalism. Some individualism is being allowed. In other words, instead of just listing people, if you are a relative to the widow, why can't you help without asking the church to chip in? If God has given you resources. I think that's what I hear the Bible actually telling you. Help them and not let the church be burdened with them, so the church can help those widows who are really in need. So the church must get a clear instruction that you really cannot yourself a biblical church, and you have no department that looks after welfare of the weak in your church. The Paul wants to be clear in the responsibility of the church to look after the weak in the church. Part of the offerings people are giving must be allocated not just to preaching, but to helping the weak in the church. Financially weak, or physically weak, or whatever. And you know, those days widows were helpless, like we've discussed before. So that will be something that is important. So the church takes responsibility to look after real widows. Also means that there must be a vetting process. Don't just help anybody who comes to say, hey, I'm in need. Mm-hmm. Have some social work investigation before you commit God's money. Because the money that's been given to the church is called God's money, without due diligence. So you must research clearly who these people are. But how else we say that the widow, the weak, must not offer themselves to be helped by the church if they can do something for themselves. And I think that's what I'm hearing. So the church has responsibility, but individuals have a responsibility. Number 3, the relatives also have a responsibility. Instead of expecting the church to take over something they can actually handle. Thirdly, the non-relatives, but who are members of the church, can actually help without asking the church itself to actually help the weak. in the church.